What's going on YouTube? It's Taylor from Ranch Strategies and Medicine in Bad Places. And in this video, we're going to be discussing some rope access and egress considerations in the tactical environment. So the motivation or inspiration to do this video is I just got back from being out in the western part of the United States doing some tactical rope work out there. And in my flights back and forth, my mind was just going, and I kind of started realizing, or really thinking to the fact that there is an intersection where traditional fire department, rope-based technical rescue, SWAT work, and the TECC, EMS world all intersect and meet. And there are a lot of places where rope access and egress could play, vital roles there, or all have to come together. Not to mention, currently, acts of terrorism, which definitely include active shooter situations. The fact that this country is ready to be at war on multiple fronts, and there's always a consistent promise to have additional attacks within our nation's borders. Natural disasters, not to mention my firsthand experience as a REMS paramedic, which is like a rope rescue paramedic for the wildfire guys, and just literally living the increase in duration and intensity of the wildfire seasons, where we are just deploying an incredible amount of people and resources into some really, remote and hostile terrain. So, high and low angle rescue in the wilderness is much the same as the urban interface. It's just the specific differences between the type of terrain that's being negotiated, basically mountaintops versus rooftops. Yet each platform shares many associated environmental factors. I think the biggest obstacle faced is that of time and distances involved in accessing the wilderness, accessing the patient in the wilderness terrain, and then the eventual evacuation of the patient, which is definitely going to be prolonged, even if you're using aircraft to do it. This is actually one of the things I think U.S. Forest Service does a really great job of, is forward deploying us as resources into these remote environments with these fire crews, so that if something, bad does happen, our response and access time is cut down dramatically because we're already there. Now, how does this play, into the urban setting? Well, this isn't to say that there aren't going to be associated delays. For example, if there is some sort of technical rescue capability or capacity that should absolutely be employed when necessary in an active shooter situation, if the shooter or terrorist is denying or limiting your access, you're going to be significantly delayed. So, these inherent difficulties that I just mentioned in both of the environments just, add to the contributing factors and add a greater complexity to the rescue environment you're dealing with. So one of the things we always need to have on our minds when operating in a high angle environment, whether in a tactical or rescue scenario, it doesn't matter, is that we need to be so comfortable in these exposed situations and so competent in our technical abilities and medical skill set that we can work in extreme conditions and be able to be completely 100% focused on our patient's care. And we give a little bit of this in our last two most recent TECC courses that we put on. We just kind of scratched the surface with this a little bit, kind of let the providers get a taste of what our goal is as far as patient treatment is concerned. We really try to harp on and get into the fact that to be successful in these cases, you need to have full spectrum casualty management that requires proficiency in four key areas, and that is access, assessment, stabilization, and then extrication, which goes into, by kind of any means necessary. Because when complex rescue situations arise, such as the removal from a rooftop or a mountaintop or a collapsed structure, etc., whatever the case is, your treatments simply just become further and further complicated in these situations. So speaking of our courses, since I just mentioned it, in our courses, we always try to showcase how trauma care in the tactical environment is very complex. It requires a unique blend of situational awareness, foresight, medical skill, multitasking, and of course, physical strength. With that, potential rescue, and when I say rescue, I mean rope rescue, is a critical but often overlooked component to nearly all tactical medical situation management. We really try to harp on and get into the fact that to be successful in these cases, you need to have full spectrum casualty management that requires proficiency in 4 key areas, and that is access, assessment, stabilization, and then extrication, which goes into, by kind of any means necessary. Because when complex rescue situations arise, such as the removal from a rooftop or a mountaintop or a collapsed structure, etc., whatever the case is, your treatments simply just become further and further complicated. Now, this is why we feel for ourselves, as well as anyone who comes through our tactical rope technician course, that at a bare minimum, any operator on rope needs to be capable of two-way travel, both up and down, on demand, with no exceptions, completely independent of topside operators. This is because it's not hard to imagine a scenario or situation in which the rope may not reach the ground or access to the top may not be possible. This is why we teach not only remote rigging, but also why we have our equipment stowed in a very specific manner that allows for maximum efficiency for deployment purposes. This also allows us to more easily perform these skills in the snow, in the dark, rain or shine, equipped with your full loadout, with the extra weight, with the extra, mass on you and things that are just kind of cumbersome. And with that all in place, have a plan and set up ready for rapid extrication if something were to go wrong. We are also currently testing some less than traditional means of conducting casualty extraction, and those are all born based off of the way we have our gear set up. One of the players that we work in conjunction with to constantly improve techniques as well as gear options is Anderson Rescue Solutions. Through practical exercises and just a magnitude of brainstorming sessions, we work on bridging the worlds of that, technical rescue and sport climbing and the associated equipment that it goes along with each of the disciplines. Kind of just like how TECC was born from TCCC. Check out the TECC video that we did a little while ago for some more information on that whole evolution. So when it comes down to it, in these tactical environments, we just want to take advantage of the reliability of the traditional fire department-based technical rescue guidelines and push those towards our tactical operational rescue strategy, because our emphasis and what our instructors really try to get across and make second nature is focusing on being light and fast. And this inherently means, using minimal gear, working in low light conditions, adhering to noise and light discipline, dealing with possible hostile threats, and variable evacuation times. They can all be addressed, trained on, and prepared for, just because, again, just like in the TECC, TCCC evolution, the principles of casualty care and rescue work remain consistent. It's just that the practices must be adapted to the end user's environment. When we teach our tactical ropes course, tactical paramedic course, and now we have just started incorporating rope work into our TECC program, albeit very, very, very basic rope work, we show specific real-world situations in where rope access or egress capabilities could have been absolutely invaluable. More so, specifically, the Virginia Tech Columbine incidents is what we focus on during those classes. So much so that we actually collaborated with Anderson Rescue on a TECC specified rope system called the Rapunzel Kit. And through our testing, through the training programs we've been pushing out on, it has proved phenomenal and invaluable. Definitely something, if you're interested, hit him up and look into that. So what are we talking about here specifically? The best way that I can compare this and contrast this a little is to my previous life career as a New York City firefighter. Physical fitness component there was incredibly stressed. The benefits and the necessity of this should not be hard to realize, and I was thrilled that this bled right over to my current law enforcement career, they had just as much an emphasis on physical capabilities, so that it was, just an awesome consistency across the board that I love seeing. Further to that, things like pre-planning and risk assessments are involved, as well as I constantly harp and incorporate these things into my current responsibilities as a whole. The fire department has done and continues to do a much better job at this than the law enforcement world. Now, when we start getting into things like system redundancy and specialized equipment, here's where we at RANT make a fast departure from traditional methods. By definition, a redundant component of a system is one that doesn't need to be there. It's not needed. You can kind of see where I'm headed with this, and more so, it's interesting when you become intimately familiar with the NFPA standards. It is so frustrating and makes me just want to bang my head against the wall when people or agencies just get stuck on some of the guidelines that they think a certain standard applies to what they are doing. And in fact, it has nothing to do with it all. We will actually use some of those same NFPA standards just with a deeper understanding to justify the exact piece of equipment or technique we are implementing. And this, more often confused by fire personnel when it comes to the tactical side. Our primary mission usually isn't rigging for rescue, though our ropes and connectors and hardware, even if they would be utilized for rescue, are still perfectly safe. So when we start to explore these incidents and identify where rope capabilities could have been implemented, there should be a push for anyone operating as part of a rescue task force to have an understanding, albeit a basic one, of tension rope systems and angle loading and even some mechanical advantage familiarity. The fire department historically has preached and does a really good job of objectively basing their risk assessments and follows the old adage of risk a lot to save a lot, risk nothing to save nothing ideology to influence the methodology they are going to utilize at any given situation. Now that EMS and law enforcement have caught up with that, i.e. our response to active shooter incidents and the implementation of law enforcement specific TECC courses, we can see that we have situations where we cannot follow a perfectly planned set of conditions and may need to be ready to do things like identify and build and anchor systems in environments that no one has pre-planned for. We may find ourselves needing to employ these rope techniques in a very diverse response zone. So having some universal methods would be a very solid approach to make that as safe as possible. So if you haven't considered this as a possibility for your agency or department, I would love to know why that is. Or if you have implemented something like this, please put all that information just down in the comments. Hey, we're doing this. Hey, we're not doing this. I tried it. I got pushed back on it. Whatever the case is, I just like to know that people are having these talks, the agencies are resisting it, or they are adapting to it. Or if you're interested in coming out and doing the Tactical Rope Technician course or any of our other trainings, shoot us an email. info@rantstrategies.com is the address. With the creation of rescue task forces, we have done an amazing job of literally combining, to an extent, EMS and law enforcement and taking the best of these two worlds and taking their schools of thought and leveraging a collaboration that has made developments and improvements which will ensure the best possible outcomes in these scenarios. Here at Medicine in Bad Places with RANT Strategies, we feel that we can train a more disciplined, more skilled, and critically thinking first responder that is armed with the latest information, the best gear, and the most cutting edge techniques. That way they can, kind of find themselves in these dynamic situations and rise to the occasion to be successful. So if you like what you heard, please like and subscribe on the YouTube video. If you're interested in seeking out training, check out the websites, medicineinbadplaces.com or rantstrategies.com. And you can always shoot us an email about which specific courses you're interested in, because we kind of always have feelers out there for interest as far as people wanting which specific course. So with that, stay safe. We'll see you next time.